Hey, everybody, it's Mike and Matt.
Hey, what's up, guys?
First of all, I just want to say thank you for listening to the show. Your support has been really cool.
Yeah, you guys have been great.
And Frank is no longer with us.
Yep.
He quit the show.
Yeah. Okay, good. You keep saying that, and it makes it sound like he's dead.
Like he's dead?
Yeah.
No, he's alive, I think, I assume. But we're sad to see him go, but that was his decision.
Yeah.
And Frank is a very funny guy.
Yeah.
He was great for the show.
Mhm.
He had a lot of great information to share.
Right.
And we'll miss him, but we'll have him back as a guest and stuff like that.
He'll be
and,
back.
Please check out his stand-up and check out his Instagram if you want to see what a real man looks like. If you guys need some advice on how to be handsome, we all wish we were going to look as good as him when we're 50.
Yeah.
But no hard feelings or anything, and we wish him the best.
Yeah.
And we hope you enjoyed today's episode. How we doing, everybody? Thanks for joining us on this cold winter day in New York. It's 10 degrees outside, and we got our space heater going, and my landlord won't return my calls about fixing my heat.
I love your gentle NPR vibes right now.
I think that's how I'm going to do the show from now on.
Very gross.
Yeah. And with us today is a good friend of mine. We go way back from you could say, what would you say, Luisa? You comedy adjacent?
Comedy adjacent sounds good.
Yeah. Luisa Díez.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much
welcome.
for being here.
Excited to be here.
We got an exciting episode. How's your week? All right?
Pretty good. First week of the year. I don't know when this is coming out, but
This Wednesday.
This Wednesday.
Yeah, so adjusting.
We're a Wednesday podcast.
Wednesday. That's good.
Trying
That's
to be
good.
number one.
It's kind of, yeah.
Yeah,
All
adjusting
good
to the
ones come out.
cold. New Year's resolutions. What are you guys working on?
Oh.
Well, New Year's resolutions are weird because it's like, why does the New Year start in January? It's the coldest month of the year, and all you want to do is like gorge yourself.
Right.
I mean,
You know?
well, winter is at different times in different parts of the world, Michael. So
That's true. Why doesn't everything follow our calendar?
Yeah.
The greatest
Everything
country in
revolves
the world.
around New Jersey.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, Louisa hates America, and that's what we're gonna.
terrible.
That's what we're gonna get into.
Michael.
So yeah. Well, we gotta.
I was going to tell you my resolution.
Oh, yeah,
Is
tell
just to
me.
get out more, just be a little more social. Because I
Just
feel,
in general.
Why?
yeah, I get a little introverted and I smoke a lot of pot. So,
Ooh, same. That's the problem.
so
And I live alone now, and I got to tell
Good
you,
for you.
it's almost always better to be home alone high than it is to be out with people.
Really?
100%.
Yeah, it's a real
I
problem.
think the best times I've had, you're just alone,
Yeah, it's
alone,
really
drunk
great.
or high. I don't get to be alone because I
Right.
live with
Yeah.
I live with a beautiful woman who I like very much. But we bought this TV like over Black Friday, and I don't want to leave my house. I don't want to
Yeah.
do spots.
You got what you need.
Yeah, I want to just be a fat day trader.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I don't know. How do we intro this episode? This is like a special episode, and I'm happy that you're here. Louisa is not from America. That's why she hates it.
Technically, first generation American.
Are you?
Yeah, one could say anchor baby. It's no
Okay.
longer an
Okay.
accepted term, but I'm 100% an
So
anchor baby.
you were born here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was conceived in Colombia and then
Right.
born here.
Okay.
I would say I've never
So you
been
could
told
be
this, but
president.
very, very purposefully they did it. It was like a way to stay in America.
Right.
So
Right.
I'm an anchor baby that, exactly what
parents-
Republicans hate.
Your parents were shrewd business people.
Right. Exactly. They knew where to set up business. Yeah.
Right. Well, your dad had some business in Colombia.
Right.
Your dad was involved in the banana trade.
The Medellin.
Yes. Yeah. And then he switched out for
Hey! You want to get killed?
Oh, right.
You don't use that word.
Right. I'll bleep it.
Yeah.
You don't want to get into the middle of the banana wars, guys.
We don't
Yeah.
have to. Right. We don't have to bleep as much stuff now that Frank is gone.
Right. I'm not going to say the N word. You're good. Yeah.
Anyway, so why don't you tell us who your dad was and what
Okay.
tell
sure.
us his name, tell us his social security number, and
Well, okay. So his first name was Fabio. We'll leave it at that. And my dad was second of 13 kids. in Colombia, and
There's not that much information on him.
I
I've
know,
noticed.
yeah. Well, he
He's
was a
pretty
private
good at-
guy. He was a very private guy,
Yeah.
and it wasn't his business to be in the public eye. It was his business to be the one under the radar
Yeah.
that could go and set up the businesses that would launder the money and all of that stuff. So I guess as an intro, he was.
But he was a legitimate businessman.
I mean, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you could say what
he
he
had
did.
businesses that existed.
But you're gonna say, yeah, right.
Yeah. So
You're gonna say what he did.
And the discipline and the foresight to know to be under the radar like that. A lot of these guys seem like they want Hollywood movies written about them, you know?
Yeah, no, not these. I mean, I would say Pablo probably was. So I guess for the people listening, the brief intro, the briefest I could make it is my dad and Pablo met when they were very young, probably like teenagers. I want to say like 16, 15. And
Pablo Neruda.
Pablo Escobar. My bad. Okay, yes.
Famous banana.
Yeah, like Picasso, So yeah, my dad and Pablo Escobar met when they were very young. They got into, small crime things together. And then together they stumbled upon the cocaine trade locally and were the ones that decided that this could be a great enterprise to turn it into an international business. So together they did that. And I grew up mostly in Colombia, but I lived in a lot of different countries. I was born in Miami. And then we just moved back and forth a lot to different places. And then my dad was killed when I was 10. Yeah. So... Yeah,
Sorry.
so I had, it's okay. I've dealt with it a long time ago. And more than anything, I live with a very stark contrast of pre and post life. Like I lived a life of being like a rich kid that had bodyguards and traveled the world and all this stuff and didn't really get what my dad did.
Now you live in my neighborhood.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, now my mom is a cleaning lady.
Yeah.
And
Is she?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's pretty funny because she works for rich people cleaning their houses.
Yeah.
And then she comes home and she's like, you should see how tacky it is. I would never have bought couches like that.
Really?
She just judges their shit because she's like, I had a nicer house than this fucking guy. Yeah.
Did your
It's
mom
really
have
fun.
good taste?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I'll see if I pull up some pictures for you later of her in her splendor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
They were definitely tacky, and don't get me wrong, there is something I mentioned to you guys before about the common thing with rappers is the new money thing, right? Which is if you were always poor and now you have all this money, there's always going to be a little bit of you that just spends it on ridiculous things that is a kid about it, that you're just so happy that you have these really tacky things that you didn't have access to before. So no, they definitely had bad shit. My dad had real tacky clothes. They had tacky cars.
But why get into that life if you can't do that,
Right, exactly.
Totally.
What are you going to wear? Sneakers? I don't know.
Yeah.
And that was the 80s too.
Yeah.
That wasn't
That
just...
was the tracksuit era.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think my dad ever wore a tracksuit, to be honest with you. Oh, that's not true. He wore the windbreaker-y kind because it was late 80s.
It was turquoise and yellow. And
and fuchsia and purple. And
Hell yeah.
He my mom dressed him a lot, so he did tend to wear a lot of those mid to late 80s womanly colors, like a salmon. I saw my dad wearing salmon a lot. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Nice. Yeah, but we watched a couple documentaries about the cartel, and I don't think that's not exactly what we want to get into, because we want to talk more about your life and what your experience was,
Which
being,
cartel was the thing about?
The Medellin cartel?
Okay.
That was your father's?
That was my dad's, yeah.
Yeah.
Because they were in Colombia, so this is all pre-Pablo Escobar's death.
Mm-hmm.
So there were two cartels that were at odds. At first they weren't, but then later they were.
Right.
And one was the Medellin cartel, which is what my dad and Pablo were in, and the other was the Cali cartel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those are the guys that worked with Los Pepes and the government.
Right.
And
Luisa informed me that, because we were talking once, and I was like, yeah, it's always weird when you watch the Food Network and someone goes, I'm going to make some plátanos with tacos and cilantro. But she's like, but actually, I'm like, that's so weird when people do that. But she was like, actually, if Spanish was your first language, that's how you would say it.
right.
If you moved to Italy, you wouldn't be like, I'm going to make some. You wouldn't be like,
you would say Burger
Cheerios.
King. You would say Burger King like Burger King.
say
You wouldn't
Burger
be
King.
like Burger King. It just isn't. But it's weird because then you also do it the other way, because I remember in Miami there used to be a chain store called Burdines. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Yeah.
Which all the Colombian women, they would just read it in Spanish, like my mom's friends and stuff, and they would call it Burdines. So then it's it happens both ways. People corrupt languages. That's what life and culture is, man.
Yeah.
Sure. But yeah, Yeah, it's just funny because like that's how. Yeah, you just say it the way you're used to saying it.
Ravioli.
We just spend the episode talking about ravioli
and how to pronounce dumb shit. Well, I can start with saying I brought you guys 2 chocolate bars from Colombia. These are like every kid in Colombia grows up eating these.
Okay.
Because inside they have like a little sticker or a stamp. It used to be a stamp. No, there's no cocaine in it.
Rub it with real cocaine. They rub it on their gums.
And you would buy like an album and you had to collect all the stamps and then you would trade them with other people and they would have like themes. And so the current theme is of Colombian landscape or something. So then it has like pictures of trees and animals that are native. So, you know.
Nice.
Bring you a little positivity from Colombia before you get all into dissecting my family's bad behavior.
I don't think we're gonna do that. We don't. We don't judge.
Honestly, we like
glorify
to,
you.
We like to glorify a little bit. You know, focus on the positive stuff.
Well, see, but that's weird to me as somebody having grown up in it. Is that it was never like a glorified thing. It was like you don't talk about it because you don't expose your family to dangers.
Right.
It was very much like, this is our job. It's a thing that we didn't, you know, my dad didn't go to college. My dad didn't finish high school even. By the time he was killed, he was 36. So he was a really young man doing the best that he could. And when I say that, like, he was one of 13 kids, right? So like a Catholic family with no birth control, right? And he was the second oldest. And by the time
Which is weird that Catholic dads don't know how to like pull out. You know? You're like super poor. And
but imagine
shooting loads
kids,
in your wife.
Imagine if you're still pulling out and you still got 13 kids. That's like how much they're boning. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. But
I've been pulling out for 3 years. We're okay.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Well, the Italians are notoriously infertile people.
Are they?
No, I just wanted to shit on my person.
Yeah, right. I wasn't even offended by that, bro.
Well, yeah, no. So he was the second oldest, and him and his older brother and the one below him, like my dad, by the time he was 12, he was out of school, and he would sell, I mean, I don't know if any of you have been to South America, but in South America, there tends to be a lot of like vendors on the street in between traffic. So my dad would be one of these kids that would sell cigarettes or fresh cheese or whatever on the side of the road and bring the money home to his to his mom for the little kids to be able to go to school, right?
Yeah.
So that's how working on the streets is how he met Pablo, and then how they like got into small time.
Your dad was the second kid of 13?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did he have an older? Did his older brother?
He did have an older
something?
brother, and so of the 13 of them, 5 of them were women.
Okay.
And all the men, except
it's funny that your aunts and uncles get to be like graphic designers or like whatever.
No, not at all. That's what I was going to tell you. Is like this is how deep it was, because I think you were asking me earlier about like socializing outside of the family, and it's like no, there is no socializing outside the family, because so my dad had 6 brothers, 5 of them and him were in the business. The only one that wasn't was the youngest one, because he was like. I mean, when I was a kid, he was like a teenager, maybe. Okay. So I think that he was like the baby of the family, and he did, by the time he like got older, he didn't have to work.
Yeah, so that
all
age,
the other ones did shit, you know.
That age gap is like 20 years or so.
Yeah, between my dad and his youngest. Yeah, probably like 15, 18, something like that. And I forgot what I was gonna say. So all of the guys except for the young one worked in the business, and all of the women were married to men that were in the business, except for one who she married like an accountant dude, but then the accountant dude started working for my dad as an accountant for his business. And then my aunt ran like the shoe factory that my dad owned, and like, so everybody was in it. And basically, so all of my uncles and my dad died violently. They were all assassinated, except for the youngest one. He died in a motorcycle accident.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah. And so I have one uncle alive now.
Oh. Yeah. Are you close with him? Do you talk
No. He, I mean, not to skip to the end of the story, but that whole thing about when Pablo turned himself in with all his dudes.
You want to get into that later, or you want to?
Yeah, we can get into it later. But it's basically my uncle was the only one that went with him, and then when they all left, my uncle was like, "Yeah, I'm just gonna stay here and finish my bid." So he actually stayed in jail. Everybody fucking died. He finished his whole bid, and he got out, and now he's a dishwasher in Florida somewhere. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Smart.
I mean, these people didn't have savings accounts. You know what I mean?
Kids, you can always turn your life around.
And be a law-abiding dishwasher.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we talk about this sometimes. It does seem like for a lot of these guys, there is kind of like an origin story. You know?
Yeah.
Like Greg Scarpa had to like deliver coal with his father when he was like 7 years old. And it's like, you just think of, because like in this country, we don't really experience like extreme poverty. Like I've been broke before. I've not had jobs, but there's always like somewhere I can go back to. And I just feel like your dad must have experienced some level of poverty where it just made him go like, do you think it was something that he felt like he had to do, or
I think
did he like it, or
in general, even if you're not in this business, for Latin men, being a provider is very much part of being a man and being an adult.
Yeah.
And if you think about like he's 12 and he was already expected to contribute to the household.
Right.
That was it. That's all that you are in life.
Right.
Is you need to bring back money to your family. So
you think your dad was selling cheese and he was like, this fucking sucks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
Because you don't even get to keep the money that you're making.
Yeah.
He could have been the best cheese seller.
And here's the thing is, my dad was like a bad kid.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But like a bad kid in the sense of like skipping church and school and like hanging out with his friends out on the street.
Yeah.
And so I remember that my grandma used to tell me, like, this is like before he got into all this shit, that she would try to ground him and he would, sneak out of the house and whatever.
Okay.
So what she would do to him is lock away all his clothes and then make him like wear one of his sister's dresses, thinking that he wouldn't go in the street and have his friends see him wearing dresses. And like their favorite story was that you would just find him down the block sitting like with his balls in the air playing dice, wearing a full dress. In a dress. And it was just like, I had to go out, whatever.
Fuck.
Yeah, so I could see him.
That's balls.
Yeah, just being like, I don't give a fuck. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Literally and figuratively. Yeah. Yeah, so I do think it was a big part of that. And it was, man, what was that movie? Is it A Bronx Tale? The one where the dad's a bus driver?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Is it? Yeah. So that one is actually one of the Italian mobster movies that I like most identified with when I saw it. And I watched it with my mom and it was crazy because she was like fascinated. It was crazy. But I imagine that that's a lot of what it was like for my dad, because that whole scene, do you remember when like the gangsters in the bar, they like give the kid money to go bring a package or whatever, and then the mom finds the money. And
I've never seen Bronx Tale.
You haven't seen Bronx Tale? Oh my God.
I don't think it's on Netflix anymore.
Oh my God. It's so good. Well, there's this whole scene where it's, basically Robert De Niro is like a bus driver.
Yeah.
And he has a kid and a wife, and he's like this Italian guy who's always wants to be like a stand-up guy that teaches his kid the right way to do things and all this shit.
Yeah.
And the kid hanging out on the block meets these gangsters that like hang out in the corner bar.
Yeah.
And the gangster, I think one of them is Chaz Palminteri.
Yeah.
And he's like,
Did we talk about him on the last show,
He's
Matt?
good. I fucking love him.
No. I don't think we talked about the Bronx Tale.
Because Chris DiStefano, our friend, did a show.
Right, and he was
Chaz
his dad.
Played his dad. Yeah. Taped the pilot.
I fucking love Chaz Palminteri. And now I see it's like a daddy issue thing. Yes, now that we bring it up. But then Chaz basically is like, oh, this is a cool kid.
Do you think that's why we're friends? Because I kind of have like the mentality of a gangster.
I think so. Sure. I mean, I don't want to give you too much credit, but a little bit of like what I was saying to you before we started the show of some of the ways that this lifestyle shaped me now as a person is that I do value loyalty and I value standing by your word.
Yeah.
And I value not being afraid of being the man and the person that you are and presenting that consistently to the people around you.
Right.
And I do see that in you. So yeah, maybe.
Yeah, all positive traits from the organized crime world.
Yeah, I don't think I would have lasted very long, but it's
Why
nice
not?
to hear. I don't think I could kill anybody. I'd probably
You'd figure it out, dude.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess if Louisa's dad can do it, how hard can it be?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you can figure it out.
It's just like punching a hole in a wall, you know?
Oh, thanks for bringing that up. So it was probably like, I mean, there is sort of this idea that like they didn't have any other options, but your dad probably did like that lifestyle and was drawn to it, right?
I mean, right, but it was, like when I say to you, like my aunt married an accountant, like it was like they get married and they move into my grandma's house. Like everybody was poor. There was no like,
right.
If you say there's another option, it isn't this way of the Bronx Tale thing of like your other option is be a minimum wage bus driver. And what's the fucking movie where it's like jobs are for suckers kind of thing? So I do think there's that. It's not so much that you enjoyed it, but and this is a value that I value now is the idea of making the world you want for yourself, right? And instead of just being like, these are my only options, working outside of the system, regardless of all of the potential danger and all of the obstacles and saying, fuck it, I know I could do this. That's badass, you know?
Yeah.
If you just don't look at the other bad stuff.
Sure. Yeah. But, you know.
It seems clever that he was able to, I mean, like that they were able to figure out, you know, there's this cocaine trade internally in Colombia. And then for them to just figure out, oh, we could export this very easily. And it's so worth so much money to these people. You know?
Right.
So
when
when
they're
did your
making the
dad meet
connections.
Pablo?
I think when they were teenagers, when they were like early teens. Because, I mean, I don't remember my life ever without Pablo in it. Like, they were friends before.
Yeah.
My mom met my dad even.
He was your godfather?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Before your mom met your dad?
Yeah, I think my dad and Pablo. Yeah, because my dad was already into bad stuff when he met my mom. My mom she was 19 when she met him. Mm-hmm. And my mom was the daughter of a teacher, you know, like she was like the closest you get to middle class in Colombia. And went to Catholic school and the whole shit. And then she had a friend that was like the slutty bad friend, Adriana. And I know this little story. Yeah. And then Adriana had some boyfriend.
Freaking
whore. So she had some like bad boyfriend that was like outside the school, you know. And so then my mom went to hang out with her and met my dad through him. And then my mom actually had an arranged marriage, so she was married from like 18 to 19 to somebody else. Yeah. Then my grandmother picked for her that was like 15, 20 years older than her.
Of him?
No, my dad straight up was like, let's just leave together. So my mom ran away from her marriage to go with my dad. And then she lived with him in Colombia probably like less than a year. And then right after that, they went to the U.S., had me, and then got married.
Okay.
Beautiful.
And then like, was your dad honest about, with your mom about what he did?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
I don't, like I said, I don't really ever remember any like lies going on. It was very, if anything, withholding information. This is not shit to talk about around the kids, but it was clear that she was, you know, like when dudes came to my house to see my dad, she was there with them. There was never like this is for the men only kind of thing, which I do see more in the Italian stuff.
Right.
It was more like partners. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, you know, we're not perfect, but
yeah, you know, patriarchal bastard.
Yeah. Do you think your mom dealt with any guilt, maybe, or I don't know?
I do actually, and the reason that I know that is because of the Bronx Tale. Because when I watched it with my mom, she watched the whole fucking movie, right? And at the end, the first thing that she said was, You know, your grandmother was just like that fucking woman. Like that. And I was like, what are you talking about? And it went all the way back to the beginning of the movie to like the parents. Yeah. So Robert De Niro's wife. Yeah. Because in the scene that I was trying to tell you about, what happens basically is like the kid makes some money for running a package for the gangsters. And he like starts saving it for some baseball shit or whatever the fuck. Yeah. And the mom finds it and tells the dad about it. And De Niro is like, hits the kid and it's like, what the fuck? You were going to go downstairs and you're going to return this money. Yeah. And the mom goes, I mean, but honey, come on, we got bills to pay. And she like wants to keep the money that the kid made like this. So my mom
That's a funny thing too. Like you're a kid and you're like, well, my dad is poor and he beats me. And these gangsters have money and they're nice to me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then the mom,
I guess that's how they shape them like early, you know?
Yeah, but then there's that weird dichotomy of like the dad wants you to be a good person even if you're poor. And the mom is like, yo, but maybe we could take this money, you know? Yeah. And so my mom was like, that's how your grandmother was, my dad's mom. Yeah. So then she was like, I guess this is one of the first times I heard her express guilt, which was, or like express the fact that she wasn't 100% behind what my dad did, because she was like, you know, your grandmother, all she wanted was your father's money. Like she was happy that he was doing all these things because he bought her a house. He took her on trips. He did all these things for her. And
so she kind of just turned a blind eye.
And she turned a blind eye and she was good with it. And my mom was like, and I'm the one that had to see the toll it took on him and how hard it was, and we're the ones that were in danger all the time. Yeah. And so she, like, you could see that she did see and constantly think about the negatives of it. Yeah. And had some bitterness towards the family members that were just happy to feed off of his work and like not be concerned about his safety and his morality and whatever. So yeah, I do think that it was there, but it's also, you know, part of being a Latin woman is also this whole standing by your man thing and being a good wife.
You guys got a great culture.
Yeah? You like that? Yeah. It's a little questionable, but you know.
Yeah, sure. I forget what I wanted to say.
No, I mean, I could tell you about, so parties and like that's the main way where I saw it. Because most of the time we were just like a family, you know, like all I see is like my parents being parents, and we go and we do shit. We go to school. But when there were parties, it was like a real fucking thing, you know. And I think that's what I like about Italian mob films and all of this stuff is like all the weddings. That's how every wedding I went to was like everybody brings a bunch of money. Everybody's like hella dressed up. Yeah. You know, in my first communion, I was telling you guys earlier, it was I had the Colombian national team was there. The world middleweight boxing champion at the time.
That's awesome.
Was at my first communion. We had.
But it was very insular, right? There wasn't like outsiders.
Right. No, it was. I mean, it was at a banquet hall. It's like the same tacky shit that Italians did. You know, it was like at a banquet hall with like mariachis and the whole deal. And they all came in their suits, and like Higuita gave me his jersey that he wore at the World Cup.
Who's Higuita? Oh, the
goalie.
Awesome.
The goalie, yeah. And then Valderrama also gave me his jersey that he wore in the World Cup, which I was like, obviously this is for my dad. I don't know why the fuck you're giving me this shit. I'm fucking 9. I don't give a fuck. But it was the kind of thing where you saw the things that are portrayed in movies in terms of like people coming and paying their respect, and it being like a situation where my dad blew like a bunch of money on like everybody drinks, everybody eats, and it's like a fucking 14-hour thing. My cousin's first communion was actually like way bigger than mine. And so my cousin was the daughter of the guy that was one of the head guys of the Cali Cartel. Because one of the things that happened was that one of my aunts, my dad's sister, married a guy
from the Cali Cartel.
From the Cali Cartel. Yeah.
Okay.
So we had this.
Who would you say was a better cartel? Who?
Well, we know. We know
on.
about a cartel.
Come on.
All right.
Yeah. I mean, I will tell you, I don't know. I didn't have much contact with or any knowledge of Cali Cartel other than through this family, because it was like when we had family events, then we all had to like peacefully be together, you know? So like at my cousin's first communion, she was older than me, and so hers was first, and it was like at one of their ranches, and it was outdoors, and it was huge. It was like they had circus tents and popcorn machines and giant like inflatable things, all this shit. And then it was just like you could see a clear line of like half the room on this side and half the room on that side.
Right.
And it was like very
So the
clear.
Medellin cartel was probably like the Michael Jordan, and then the Cali was like Tony Kukoc.
Yeah, I mean, they're all in there with their tacky ass suits and fucking. I just remember like they were all so nice to the kids. Like the kids were the only ones allowed to like run back and forth and talk to everybody and be like, "Here's my uncle" and whatever. And you just didn't really get why your dad and your uncle like shook hands weird and you know, like there was a vibe. But it was
it like a special like secret handshake? Like
No, I don't think so. It was very just like
tension.
Special in the sense of firm and eye contact always, I would say. There was no weak handshakes in that group.
Right.
For you to pick up on that as a kid too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It was weird. I think that's why I'm an anthropologist, honestly, because from moving to the US from Colombia, that was the first time that I realized we were different. Because in Colombia,
your skulls are shaped differently.
No, you stupid idiot. I mean socially different. Like in Colombia, or while my dad was alive, regardless of what country we lived in, we were like upper class. You know, like we had money, we had drivers, we went to the best private schools, and it was very insular. We didn't really deal with anybody who would ever like question me about what my dad did or anything like that.
Right.
And then moving to the US was the first time that I like realized like, oh, this is not how all families are. Or it's the first time I realized I'm not white, right? Because it was suddenly like, oh, it's different. Like here, there's like a racial measurement to hierarchy. And where I came from, there was a power hierarchy.
Right.
And that put me at the top because I was the child of a powerful person.
Right.
Yeah.
So then here, it made me very sensitive to just observing the different dynamics between people and like how cultures are different, that kind of thing. So it was useful, you know.
This is what I wanted to ask earlier. Is Colombia like a like how's the wealth distribution? Is it it was probably a pretty poor country for a lot of people. Are there wealthier people?
There
or
are.
Is it
it's
generally
like most of South America where it's like very poor, and then
America ruined it.
Yeah, exactly. Where it's very poor and all the wealth is concentrated in the political figures usually, or titans of business who do business with the United States. And and then, you know, Argentina's got some Nazi dudes that are rich.
Right.
And that's about it.
Because Argentinians, like, they kind of look down on the rest of South
I know.
America.
I was thinking the other day about how one of my racist issues
like
is that like you're taught to hate Argentinians since you're little. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but they're hateable. You know what I mean?
They're
What are
like
you gonna do?
elves in the movie Bright.
Yeah. They think they're better than everyone. They
Yeah.
think they're white. They think they're whiter than us. They
Yeah.
think that they speak better than us.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Their food. The only thing is they do have good meat. I'll give them that. But other than that, they're real fucking annoying.
Okay.
And you guys get all that aggression out a lot in soccer too. Like that's
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah. Soccer is
Jesus, Matt, you don't have to generalize there.
No, it's a real thing. It's actually,
Generalizer.
you know what? I would actually say to you, does the two
Yeah,
Escobars?
fuck you, Mike.
I'm going to defend him and say you're wrong. But you guys said you saw the two Escobars, right?
Yeah.
Does the two Escobars talk about that? About how Pablo
He brought the fields to the poor people,
Yeah.
and it like raised the level of soccer in Colombia
Right.
for the next generations.
And I think that was a really big source of his power that people don't realize, because people think like cocaine and money and violence equal power. But really what gave him power was that he had all of the poor people in Colombia behind him.
Mm-hmm.
So if a cop is looking for this dude on this block, not one person on this block is going to tell you shit. You understand me?
Yeah.
Like,
That's why he was able to hide for so long.
Exactly,
Yeah.
because the poor people had his back. And
And it seems like the police were so corrupt anyway too, that it was
Yeah.
like it's like
Sure.
I would rather trust this guy that
Right.
gave us a bunch of shit versus
did you guys see anything about Pablo's like grandstanding, like when he started running for office and all this shit? Did you know about that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
wasn't he? Didn't he serve as a alternate?
I think he ran for it.
Alternative
I don't think he
representative?
won, or he was gonna win, and then
Okay.
they like arrested him so he couldn't
Because
win.
that's
or
what he
something
really
like that.
wanted,
Yeah.
right?
Well, no, it wasn't that. That's the thing about what was weird about Pablo and my dad. You know, they were like two sides
I
of the
will
same
say-
coin.
Yeah, because we watched a couple documentaries
Okay.
and like some of the I always read the comments on YouTube,
Okay.
and a lot of the comments were like, I can't watch these whitewashed documentaries, and then some other
Yeah.
stuff was like, you know who the real criminals are? The government.
Yeah, the CIA.
totally.
Which is kind of
100%. And
yeah, yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
thing is that that's why I say they were two sides of the same coin. Is that my dad was the business infrastructure, right? So he
Yeah.
like maintained the businesses that would launder the money. He set up the connections across countries and all these things. And Pablo, he was the face and the like representative of what the whole thing was.
Yeah.
And so what started happening is like, you got to remember this, okay? So there's like all these criminals that from the outside, you're like, these guys are all criminals, right? Because they're breaking the law.
right.
But they're all using all of their money to rebuild poor neighborhoods, to give people food, to buy them houses, to give them equipment so their kids can play soccer, paying for them to go to school.
Yeah.
And then on the other side is the completely legal, law-abiding government
Yeah.
that is
The Colombian government or
the
the
Colombian
American?
government. The
Yeah.
Colombian government, the thing that most Americans don't realize is like part of the aid package from the
Yeah.
U.S. to other countries is that they put penalties on your legislation and your policy making and all of this stuff.
Mhm.
So part of the aid package from the U.S. to Colombia included really fucked up things that were hurting the economy. They were like destroying neighborhoods. They were hurting people's lives.
Mhm.
So here's this government fucking everything up. So like, for example, one of the things that I remember as part of the aid package was that Colombia would only get money from the US if Colombia allowed the US to spray the cocaine fields with salt so that no cocaine could grow, right? As part of the whole Bush anti-drug thing, right? But what happens is that if you spray fields with salt, nothing grows, which means they started to kill coffee and flowers and bananas, which I was telling you earlier were
Yeah.
actually the primary exports. So what they did is
They
instead of
just kind of sprayed indiscriminately.
yeah. And all they did, instead of hurting the
Yeah.
actual cocaine trade, which would then move to other parts of South America,
Yeah.
all they did was hurt poor farmers
Yeah.
who
Right.
had now, you destroyed my whole farm. What do I do now except go become a guerrillero? Because now I have no other way to make money other than to go kidnap people and to go do all this shit.
Right.
So
To provide for your family.
yeah, exactly. So the U.S. from the outside was like causing all of this policy making that was destroying the economy and the livelihoods of people inside.
Right.
Then add to that, then the next step was that they started extraditing. They did the extradition treaties. And then that's when Pablo was like, oh, hell no. Like,
Yeah.
this is our country.
That's
We're
when they
going
kill all those judges.
Yeah, exactly. It started being very much about, like, I
Didn't he kill like
honestly-
12 judges
I think
or
so,
something?
yeah.
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 And then a lot
Well,
of
you know,
let's
mind
call
your
'em-
business.
Well, here's the thing is that, you know, I'm not going to say like, oh, it's not like they deserved it or anything, but it is if you're part of this whole crooked system. And, you know, I really think from the outside or like from the inside and my perspective, it seems like they were trying to have a business, right? And then the people who make the laws were at first only impacting their business and then progressively impacting their entire lives and all the people around, like their families and their neighborhoods and and they got mad about that shit and we're like, no, fuck it. Let's start killing off the fucking policymakers. Let's start running for office thing was very much a stunt to just be like, no, we run this country. You don't give a fuck about the people in this country. We're going to show you what a politician who gives a shit about people does and says and whatever. So it was very much almost like in this way that Trump, when he was running, we were like, oh, he's probably not going to win, but he's saying all these things that people want to hear and that need to be said.
And then Hillary blew it and he won.
No comment. But yeah, it was that kind of thing. That's what Pablo was doing, was being like, I'm going to be the people's champion and just make it difficult for Colombia to continue the way they're doing business with the U.S.
Right.
And
do you think that was genuine? Do you think that was like for show? Or
no, I think it was genuine because remember, like we all lived in a lot of different countries, and I even remember my mom asked him, like, at any point we could have not come back to Colombia ever again. You understand me? And
you had enough money to get out.
At any point, any of them could have been like, I live in Japan now.
Are you allowed to get out of that life though? Like,
yeah, there is no like blood in, blood out, none of that shit. You know, if anything, well, because it also
it's a revolving
isn't.
door.
No, I don't. Well, there weren't that many that got out. I don't know of any that got out really. But it was like family, and there was nobody in there that wasn't family, and it was, if anything, like I said, if you had already established that you're not going to open your mouth, they have no reason to do anything to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
So like the time that my parents tried to leave when we moved to LA, like it was totally fine. And it was the LAPD that fucked everything up, not any of the cartels having a problem with my dad leaving. You know what I mean? So it was constantly, it's hard for me to think about the violence as bad because from my understanding, it was mostly between themselves, like amongst cartels.
Did they kill any families though?
No, not that I know of. There was never anything with, and that was like real understood. You don't mess with kids and none of that.
Really?
Yeah, no. Like,
okay. Because in one of the documentaries we were watching, they were like, it's good. It's bad news for you, your family, your parents' pets. They'll kill everybody. But the guy in that documentary, played Carlo on The Sopranos. So I think a lot of these guys, they just. You know, they love the spotlight.
Yeah, I would say they exaggerate.
Like
they play into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Got to dramatize it. Yeah, fuck Reagan. The war on drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't have given my family all that money, but.
Right. But it's like, it is kind of true what you said. At least your dad was, was true to his word. And
yeah, I mean, they taught us a lot of real solid things. You know, it's really weird because I have met a lot of people who have
but you look at that violence and you're like, well, you see it as kind of necessary and like, or maybe not necessary, but you understand why it was done.
Well, here's the thing is that I take a wider view of society, and maybe it's just because I'm an anthropologist, but violence is always happening, always across the world at all times. And it happens to be that a lot of times we see certain violence as acceptable because it's being done by people that we've accepted are in power. And then it becomes weird when somebody else tries to use the tool of violence. You understand me?
Okay.
But
like
the government,
like a drone attack or something.
Exactly. The government does, and it's
or
weird
like ISIS,
for us to be like, oh, did gangsters kill women and children when we know that our government kills women and children? You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we have these weird morality lines, but it's really that they're non-sanctioned violence, right?
Right.
And the thing that I do know is
we know that our government kills people, and we're just like
right.
It's just not in front of us.
Of the,
And here's the thing: is in
war.
Colombia, I saw the first time I ever saw a dead body. I was probably like 6, 5 maybe, and it was. I would go to school on a bus, right? And it was like a private school. So it was like, and my bodyguards would follow the bus in the back in their car. And going through in the morning, like up, Medellin's a valley. Yeah. So the city's in the bottom, and then the farther up you go in the mountains, the richer you are, right? The bigger the houses are and everything.
Okay.
So my city house was like in the middle of the valley, like middle, halfway up. And then the country house was like all the way at the top. And my school was in between the two. Right. So to get to school, I either had to go like up a windy road up or down. Right. So going up the windy road one day, I saw out the side of the window like a dead body in underwear. Like I even remember he was wearing like blue tidy blueies. And I remember like coming home and telling my mom, like, I think I saw a dead guy on the side of the street. And then she like pulled out the newspaper and was like, okay, let's check. Like, let's see who it was. And it was like a very understood
thing. They just
thing.
like left bodies there?
but it wasn't them. We don't know who killed that person. Like it could have been like regular crime. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was more the fact that crime was such a common thing every day, and that was something that was very striking to me coming to America.
Yeah.
Because it's like people don't talk about the crime. Like it's not shown as much. It's why everybody now is freaking out about.
We're not confronted with it.
Right, exactly. Even on the news, it's like, here's the one worst thing that happened, but not like every day there's this violence. And, you know, in Colombia, I was like, when I was like 7, there was a big bomb. You could probably find this in the newspaper.
Yeah.
I think it was
an airplane.
No, at a hotel, at el Hotel Internacional, where I believe what happened was that there was like a bunch of politicians having some kind of summit.
Yeah.
And then the Cali cartel, I want to say, set a car bomb outside of the hotel. But that hotel was like maybe like 6 blocks from my house. So when the bomb went off, all the glass in my house shattered.
Yeah.
Like everything, like sliding doors fell down and everything.
Yeah.
And then, you know, my dad called, everybody called to make sure everything was okay and it's fine. Hey, a bomb went off. Cool. It's like a real, like, there was a hurricane, you know, like it's a thing that happens.
Yeah.
And then probably like an hour later, security cops come and knock on the door, and we open the door and they're like, hey, we're just checking for body parts. And then they just go to your backyard with a plastic bag, pick up an arm, put it in the bag, and they're out.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I guess when people are that poor, does life just not have as much value? Or
no, I don't think so, because that's happening here too. I mean, there's no car bombs here, but there's a lot of different other forms of violence. You know what I mean? And that one, and it's funny because that was actually not around poor people. That was a rich area that was hit, right? So that's what I mean. It's political crime. It's not petty crime. It's not crimes of passion. It's like real. They had a purpose in what they were trying to do. What's unfortunate is that they a lot of times had, you know,
collateral
damage of that stuff.
Yeah. That seems to be a theme.
Which it's like, just get out of the fucking way if you see a guy on a
well,
motorcycle.
I mean, I guess at that point, you can't argue that they think the collateral damage was worth it. You know, it was negligible.
Yeah.
I obviously don't think that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's weird too, because the Cali cartel seemed to work with Los Pepes, who worked with the government,
right?
Who was funded by the CIA.
Yeah, but do you see what I mean? That's why I think, and I wonder sometimes if it's like my own idealism of trying to make it sound nicer, but to me, from everything I read, it does seem like the people of the Medellin cartel, which started first, was more like, we're trying to have a business, and then they did have political ideals and like love for their country and all of this shit. And then the Cali cartel just wanted to make money, and they found a way to try to be the top dogs by cooperating with the government.
Make money. If your heart's not in what you're doing,
then you're going to be the most crooked out of all of them, right? Yeah. So they were pretty shitty. But
do you think that Pablo might have had too much power for one guy? Do you think like?
I mean, that you can make, yes, I guess so, because by eliminating him, they did the same thing that happened with Iraq, with Saddam. When they took out Saddam, then what happens is all these factions.
Power vacuum.
Yeah. And then all these factions where there's nobody left who has that level of power to control everything. So now it's just open chaos. Yeah.
And then just kind of whoever's the strongest and the most
and that's why
violent.
Currently in Colombia is just a bunch of guerrillas fighting. It's the FARC, and then some of them. And it's
is it really bad right now?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, pretty much.
We were watching.
Is that kind of what happened in Iraq once Saddam was taken out?
Yeah.
Then ISIS was just the strongest.
No, it's multiple factions fighting each other all the time in different areas.
Like some new general.
Yeah.
Coming up the rank. He's got heat coming in hot.
And in Colombia, it is still idealist. Like I believe it's the FARC or the Revolutionary Army. So they're the ones that are on the people side, quote unquote. And then there are other ones that are just crime people. And then the government is all corrupt. And so sometimes they regulate shit and sometimes they don't.
Right.
So it's a real fucking free for all.
Right.
We were watching this Vice doc from like 3 years ago, and they made it seem like they had divided up the territories and there was no violence and stuff. But this is just one journalist,
right?
But they were like making their cocaine in like labs with just microwaves and then a cheesecloth, and it was really cool. It was like this green block.
Yeah.
You think that's cool?
Yeah,
selling drugs to kids.
Straighten me out.
Listen,
Mike.
That's another point of defense is that my dad, they were big time. They were not selling to kids. You know what I mean? And here's the thing. I understand that it eventually trickles down to kids. But when you're selling tons of cocaine,
you don't have to defend, you're
not, you're not selling, you're standing on a street corner selling little dime bags to kids. You know what I mean? You're selling a huge supply. Usually, you know, when they had like connections in
They just
California,
find it because they're bored.
then
yeah.
it's just like you're feeding all of Hollywood cocaine,
Right.
And in New York, it was like all of the upper class of New York. In Miami, it was all the fucking shitty club people, right? So when they're bringing the best cocaine and the biggest amounts at the top dollar, none of that shit is going to kids.
Yeah.
No fucking kid can afford that shit. Nobody's breaking this off into dime pieces, you know? I don't know.
Yeah, you kind of forget how like harmless cocaine, just doing a little bump really is.
This episode's
Because
been brought to
everything-
you by cocaine.
No, but everything like, you know, everything surrounding it is, I guess, pretty bad. But, you know,
Right.
just a little powder to help you
Yeah.
finish
But-
your homework, you know?
And it's not so bad when you
Who
compare
cares?
it to heroin.
Yeah.
And you know, here's a funny thing. So I work in museums, and you know, almost every museum in the United States has a wing or a room or whatever that's called the Sackler wing. That is dedicated to the Sackler family, which is the family that owned Bayer, which was the company that first started marketing heroin
Yeah, they
and
say
sending it
behind-
to people and caused the entire fucking heroin problem in the United States. And they're fucking billionaires.
Yeah.
They're so rich that
Yeah.
they have rooms named after themselves in museums.
Yeah.
Yeah, they say behind every big fortune there's
Yeah.
a crime.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's like you actually literally mailed heroin in the mail to children who then overdosed.
Right.
Right? So how are you somebody worthy
Right.
of respect and all this shit?
Yeah.
And my family's not. Please get the
Right.
fuck out of here.
Right.
It's like we all
I
came to
guess
find
it's easier
out.
for you to see the hypocrisy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And we all found out like Adderall. That's just cocaine, right?
Is it?
I
I,
took-
like
is
it.
it?
I took that
I love
as a
Adderall.
kid. Yeah.
I'm like, oh God, I want it.
This makes you do homework more.
But yeah, it is funny when you compare it to people like the Rockefellers,
Right,
and the
exactly.
Rothschilds, like
Yeah.
who were on both sides of every war.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Or the Kennedys. Weren't the Kennedys all fucking alcohol?
Prohibition.
Yeah. But
well, I
they-
think Escobar thought that he would eventually become like the Kennedys.
Yeah,
because of the-
exactly.
Right.
Yeah. But it's really the Kennedys succeeded in doing it.
So you think these murders, they were just like, they probably obviously didn't want to do them, but it was just in their mind, it was just kind of like, it was just business. Someone was
think-
in the way, or
Yeah, I think so. And you know, and there's
'Cause I
different
sell pasta
versions.
sauce, and
Right, but there's different
somebody got in
versions of
my
it.
way.
You'd
Somebody
take 'em
stopped
out?
me from selling pasta sauce. You're fucking dead. Yeah.
No, I mean, look, as far as the ones that I know for sure, there
Like
are
I saw
things.
this, sorry to
where,
interrupt
oh,
you, but I saw this video recent, like a few years ago, of like this kid was selling candy outside of Target, and this older lady was like, "Sir, do you have a permit to be doing that?" And I was like, "This lady should be killed." Stopping somebody from stopping an enterprising young man from making money.
Yeah,
We're out of the
I'd
way.
agree with
Anyway,
that.
yeah. But sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was saying, as far like the types of violence, I really only would know of. I would say is like the political stuff where they were trying to like make a statement or get to a particular politician, and then usually those did have collateral damage of innocent people. Or which I don't doubt that my dad was behind ordering some of those things. I don't think he was like physically putting a fucking car bomb anywhere, but he like for sure ordered some things.
Yeah.
And then the other kind was really more like internal management is the only way that I can put it, because they would
Somebody
be
fucks
things.
up, or like,
Yeah, you fucked up, or you betrayed someone,
Yeah,
or you
stole.
open your mouth.
A lot of
Yeah.
betrayal in these.
Yeah, or like I'm pretty sure the documentary that you guys saw about Popeye, whatever. He worked for my dad, and
Or famous assassin.
yeah,
Yeah, he said he killed like over 250 people or something.
yeah, I mean that's possible. And but I mean, I know him as the guy that taught me how to play cards, and was
Yeah.
like real sweet old guy.
Yeah.
And but I'm pretty sure after my dad died, he was the one that killed the guy that killed my dad.
Okay.
And
And that was your uncle that killed your
yeah, by
father, right?
marriage. So he was married to my
Yeah.
dad's sister.
Your dad's sister. Wow.
And then because of business issues, he had my dad killed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Because he was part of the Cali cartel.
exactly. And then I found out later how he died, my uncle. And it was like he was tortured. They pulled out his fingernails. They cut off his eyelids. Like they did like real fucked up shit to him.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And so the rumor was very like it had to be personal and it had to be payback because it wasn't one of like it wasn't business. You know what I mean? And it
Yeah.
was like real cruel. So it's pretty much believed that it was probably Popeye that did it.
Okay.
So that's the level of kind of stuff he was doing to people.
Yeah, and those cartels and the families, those blurred lines.
Yeah.
So I could see how it could be easy to get talked into not necessarily betrayal. I'm sure they rationalized it, but to some levels, betrayal, you know?
You know, I actually don't know how to rationalize the betrayal. I really get how to rationalize the loyalty.
Right.
because I remember like every one of my bodyguards, for example, was like really poor dudes from my dad's old neighborhood who like with what my dad paid them, they took care of their entire families. Like their families got nice houses. They're
Like extended family.
Yeah,
too.
they're extended families. They're like old mothers could stop working. So the feeling of like this person cares about me and my entire family, and like to know that I watched my dad know every one of his workers' wives' names and their children's names, and send them food for holidays and like all this stuff. It was very much like we're here for each other to take care of each other. So that family line, the blur that I saw was like, these are all my family. You know, they were to me all my uncles. They were all people who it's almost like an abused dog in a way, where it's like you literally never ever had anything until this person chose to accept you into his world,
Right.
and treat you like you're a valuable member of everything and provide for you and yours. So of course you're
And
never
you'll do
going to turn
anything
on
for
this.
him.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Interesting. Do you deal with any? Do you feel any guilt about the stuff your dad did, or do you?
No.
Yeah.
No, not at all. Because if anything, to be honest with you, I feel really grateful all the time because, and it's a weird thing. I feel guilty that I'm grateful. You know why? Because I think about this all the time. If my dad hadn't died, I would not have gone to college.
Yeah.
I would have 3 or 4 kids by now. I would have never
You
like
stayed at Colombia.
Yeah, probably. Like all my cousins are married and I live in Colombia. And like I remember one time at dinner, like so my mom all my life used to be like tell me that I'm really fat and I should stop eating so much since I was like a little fat kid. And my dad, I remember at like the dinner table would be like, nah, let her eat. Let her eat. And then my mom would be like, but she's never gonna find a husband. Like real mean. Like I'm like 7,
Right.
okay? And my dad would just be like, yeah, no, it's cool. Let her be fat. I don't want to have to start killing motherfuckers already. Like right in front of me. And I was just like, oh yeah, dad's being dads. And then when I was a teenager, I was like, oh no, he would have killed this motherfucker. Like, oh, I would have never had a boyfriend. I would have never had sex. I would have never, like, it would have been terrible. But instead,
but have you had sex?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I got that out of the way. But instead, what I had was
What's that?
I don't know. But instead what I had was actually like I said, an example of you don't have to accept your lot in life.
Yeah.
You can go out and be more than what was given to you.
Right. I love that.
Yeah, and I had a really, like, man, if you think about it, they fucking moved to another country. They didn't speak the language. They fucking set up a whole other business. They got around the law in multiple countries.
Yeah.
They, like, figured out shit where I'm like, how do I renew my passport? You know, like, it's so fucking stupid. Every one of my friends is dumb as shit. They're all like, what phone company can I use that's not bad? And I'm like, at your age, my parents were already running fucking multi-million, multinational fucking illegal endeavors.
You don't have to rub it in. But,
no, but
this podcast is doing okay.
Right. No, but it's inspirational.
We're like small businessman in a way.
No, totally. It's inspirational, and it showed me like I don't feel guilty. I feel very much like in that sense I was shown very early on that there's no such thing as like a quote unquote normal family.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I feel like a lot of the people that I know now, the reason they go to therapists and all this shit is that they're very impacted by the fact that their family wasn't normal, quote unquote, or like their dad wasn't what they wanted a dad to be or something like that. And I never had a normal, quote unquote, normal thing.
Yeah.
And it was very clear to me as a kid, like you were taught, you're not like other people. You don't talk about this. The world is different for you.
Right.
And so when I went out,
And you just kind of accepted it.
yeah. And then when I went out and like, for example, I remember like the first time I went to one of my friends' houses in Miami. And then you see like, oh, both parents work and like it's different and they eat microwave food. Like all this, like you just see the different way that families are. Yeah. Or like I met for the first time ever somebody's stepdad and I was like, oh, a stepdad. Whoa. Like I've never
This is
had
a new
divorced
concept.
people in my life. Yeah, that's crazy. So it became very clear to me very early on that there's no such thing as normal and you make the world around you that you want it to be.
Yeah.
And also at the same time, not everything is going to be easy and not everything is going to be the way you want, but you fucking work it out.
Yeah.
You know, like you just deal.
Sure.
And so I don't know. I generally feel very grateful for all of their sacrifices. And like my mom especially, I know that most of the time when people want to know about my dad, they don't really think to ask about my mom so much.
Yeah.
But my mom is like super badass. You know, like she was his partner 100%. She fucking, I saw her face down cops.
Luisa, stop.
No,
Don't incriminate your mom.
no, I'm not going to incriminate her. Like, just in the sense, because even after he died, she was like, all right, fuck it, we're out. We're moving back to Miami. We're going to just be Americans, forget everything that happened. And then she figured out how to get a job. She had never had a fucking job in her whole life. She figured out how to take care of kids by herself, learned English, did all this shit, which I think is also came from the fact.
Is she here in New York?
Yeah, she's here in New York. Okay. Yeah, after I moved here, she moved here.
Okay.
So I had this example, even though she was like, why haven't you had kids yet? And why aren't you married yet? For a long time. A few years ago, she said to me out of nowhere, she was just like, I want you to know that I'm really proud of you because you've done all the things that I never realized I could have done with my life. And that's amazing.
Yeah.
The only reason I get to choose.
Like hung around the stand. Till
Yeah,
3 in the morning.
exactly. Exactly. Just fucking wasting my life.
Yes.
But that's the point.
Hanging out with degenerates.
Exactly. I got to choose to like not be a mom, to hang around with fucking assholes and like laugh all day, like do whatever. Yeah. All because of all of their sacrifices.
Yeah. Standing on the shoulders of your strong mother.
Yep.
Getting you here.
Yeah. And my father who took every risk.
Right.
Saying fuck the world.
Nice.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Well, because we really appreciate you being here. You told us when you came here that you've had to sort of like, for a long time, you couldn't be honest about this stuff and who your dad was. And what was that? Did you ever have to lie to other people? Obviously, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I probably never had to lie to people in Colombia, like before my dad died, because it was so insulated and everybody knew. Yeah, like I didn't really come in contact. But
you don't come in contact with people who are not in it. So all your friends and all your and all the people you see day to day.
And I think partially it was. I realized that when you mentioned it earlier, probably the whole kidnapping fear thing was like why I was never around anybody that wasn't already in this. But then after,
do you think you could ever kidnap someone?
No, for what?
No, that's sad, dude.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. Yeah. And I want to say, I think that the kidnapping stuff.
You think you could kill a judge?
Yeah, probably. No, I'm just kidding. No, but I do.
Sometimes judges are annoying, though.
Yeah,
I went to traffic court once. This lady this judge lady yelled at me because I was talking. Like that's an abuse of
small
power.
crimes judge. You could kill.
My version of it is I had jury duty not that long ago, and then like I'm in jury duty, which is really funny to me because like I'm the daughter of a fucking internationally wanted drug trafficker, and I've done things like I built the 9/11 museum. When I go to jury duty, I'm like, it's so funny that you people trust me to make decisions for your legal system. Like this is so great. So it's like they infiltrated, they succeeded. I am one of you guys. Sure. But
I just got summoned and I fucking can't stand it.
Can I tell you? So this is where, so I wouldn't kill a judge, but I sat in this fucking jury thing, and then they asked me some questions, and then because they found out my education and stuff, they were like, oh, a Latin woman that's super educated, this is perfect, the kind of person we wanted a jury. Like they literally said that to me, and then they're like, so how do you feel about cops? I was like, yeah, no, I can't trust anything a cop says. Like literally every question, and then they're like, so do you generally have negative feelings towards the legal system in America? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I think it's corrupt and it doesn't work and it's racist. And I'm like, I was like poisoning the whole jury pool.
Yeah,
and they were just like, no, they were the first round cuts. They're like, yeah, you got to go. You're out. It's like, yeah, no, great. I was going to side with the cab driver. Thanks.
All right. I'm just going to take notes on that and repeat everything.
The cab driver who murdered 4 people.
Yeah, it's fine. As long as he's testifying against the cop, I'm good.
It does seem like Pablo took better care of the poor than the government did.
Right. Yeah.
And we were because I wanted to ask you about some of your political leanings, because you would think probably that you're like a capitalist, but you said you've been a socialist since you were 18.
Yeah.
Because you think that the government has a responsibility to take care of people, and that's like that. I think to a lot of Americans that's kind of a foreign concept, because people don't realize we have this sort of like every man for himself mentality, and people don't realize that we're just spending all our money on bombs and war
but do you
planes
see
and shit like
how weird it is? So being from both places and both worlds, that's something that I wrestle with a lot, right?
Okay.
Is that, so part of me is very American in that I believe the bullshit of the American dream of like, be an individual, pull yourself up from your bootstraps, work harder for everything that you want. Like as a woman, if I have to work 10 times as hard as a man, then fine, that's what I'll fucking do.
Right.
Like
it just seems to a lot of Americans like the idea of socialism is like you would
but check it out. This is what's crazy to me.
Blowing a goat or something.
No, I know, but this is what's so crazy and contradictory to me is that so we have this idealism of like individualism, and we don't need to be helping each other because only the best should survive, etc.
Yeah.
But then were also put off by men like Pablo and my dad who were doing that,
Yeah.
who were
Right.
saying, fuck the social system. I'm going to, for me and my own, do all this shit. To them, to us, that's still bad and that's criminal, even though that encapsulates the whole idea of being an individual and doing whatever you have to survive and come up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then meanwhile, on that side, they are superb capitalists, right?
Yeah.
They like really fucking made a lot of money, made a huge mark on the world, changed shit like crazy.
Yeah.
And yet, what did they do with it except distribute all their wealth?
Mm-hmm.
Except turn around and be like, hey, other people need food.
How
and
much of their
houses.
wealth do you think
Yeah.
they gave away?
Most of it,
Most of
because
it.
I mean, I would say probably split evenly between giving away and spending extravagantly for themselves and their families.
Yeah.
Because remember also that they couldn't have like savings accounts with their names on them because
Right.
if they get arrested, that all gets
Mhm.
taken.
So they had to do something with that
Yeah,
money.
so the money was always in flux,
Uh-huh.
or it was
it always
in
cash?
property. No, it could be property that was under other people's names.
Okay.
So like I know that there was a house that was under my name at one point, and I was like 4. So I owned a house in Coral Gables.
Nice.
So yeah, so that's the kind of thing. It's like the money's always hidden. So after my dad died, my mom had to try to find as much as she could so that we could just move to Miami. But there was like no fucking money paying out after that. There's no pension. There's no like any of that. Yeah. So I would say they eat probably between giving it to strangers and family and extended family and spending it on ridiculous things for themselves, like going to the World Cup. And
Organized crime seems to need better PR. You know what I mean? To get that out. Because Apple will give away like 0.01% of their money, their profits, and then they'll spend like 5% advertising
that, yeah.
You know? And these guys actually did real shit.
Yeah.
So-
Well, but that's what's interesting is that they didn't do it for the PR.
Right.
They
Exactly.
did it because they
That's what I
actually
wanted
thought
to
it was
say.
wrong
Yeah,
to keep
yeah.
it all. Yeah.
Right. It does seem like it with your father. It was sort of a genuine thing where it's
Yeah.
like he wanted you and your brother to
Learn our lesson.
learn. And,
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Sure. Yeah. But so it is a really interesting juxtaposition, you know, of like, at what point do we value the individual and their accomplishments? And then at what point do we care about each other as like a social system?
Sure.
And so ultimately that's why I'm a socialist, is because that's the core idea, is like, why would you want money if it wasn't to make your life and everybody else's life around you better?
Yeah. Why would you want to just hoard it?
Yeah.
To
That
yourself?
to me doesn't make sense, which is why I'm not on the capitalist side of things.
Yeah.
Right. They say Republicans are actually more charitable, though. when
Oh
you break
Lord.
it down.
Oh Lord.
No, that's just something they say.
That's a messed with figure. I bet it's
It
like
must
because
be,
of
yeah.
their dollar amount, not the percent of their income or some shit.
Oh, you think?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I
like
gotta
that
remind
old
me, I gotta give
biblical
some money. I gotta-
tale of that
what?
lady that gives away everything she has, and it's just like a coin versus like the rich man
Exactly.
who
It's
gives
like-
up like 10 times more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they had millions.
Mhm.
Right. What are the good charities to donate to? Let's let our listeners know. I give to Save the Children every month, and just because that's the kind of
that's
guy I am.
good.
Thank you. And St. Jude's is a good one, I guess.
Whatever Patreon we decide to start would
Oh,
be
yeah.
a good one.
Donate to us.
We're a
Donate to
charity.
us. I don't know. I try to do women's shelters once in a while, just because. Oh, actually, this is related because one of the things that marked me a lot from this lifestyle is that, so my dad was assassinated in 91. I think Pablo was killed
Do
in.
you know how it happened or?
Yeah. He left my house not in the middle of the night, probably like 10 o'clock.
You were 10.
And so he had been helping me with my homework. Remember, I told you my mom was in the U.S. establishing her residency so we could leave again. And my mom called and had a conversation with my dad on the phone. And later I learned that they got in an argument because she wanted to stay in Miami another week. And so he left the house pissed, like drove out without his bodyguards. And normally bodyguards go with him everywhere. So apparently somebody was watching the house, saw him leave alone. And then in one of the like dark roads down the street, 2 cars blocked him, one in front and one in back. And somebody got out of the car and shot him in the back of the head. Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah. So in between probably like 90 to 94 was when most of the men that I knew growing up died. Right. And
That's kind of when it all sort of ended.
Yeah, exactly. And so pretty much within 4 years, all these men died violently. And so all I saw for the next 10 years was just widows. Nothing but widows and kids around me who was like, every time I overheard my mom having a conversation with my aunt or with a friend, it was just like, what are we going to do? All these women that had they had no jobs before. They had no way of finding all the money. They had fears of like, who's going to expect them to have money or come after them for something that their husbands did. So they were just terrified, and they had like no way of knowing how to move on.
Yeah.
And that is probably the thing that scarred me the most. That is the reason that like I never want to get married and that I don't, I'm very independent to the point of like, it's hard to connect with me because I don't ever want to need another person.
Yeah.
And it's because of that, because all I ever saw was women who couldn't get through the world without a man. And it wasn't even their fault. It was that that's the way that the world was set up. So that's why I give to charities that are, and I don't do it often, so I don't want to sound like I'm a great person. I should do it more. But when I do, it is usually something for
took
women.
all your money, right?
Right. Yeah. So some of it is for women, just because I do think whether it's here or there, very often women are in positions like that where they're stuck with children, not to make it sound like children suck, but they do. But but they're stuck in really bad situations that they got into very, very young. Yeah. And then it's too late to like reverse the things that they're, So whenever possible, I do want to donate to women not having babies or being able to take care of the ones that they do have or getting an education or something like that.
Nice.
Sometimes I wonder how annoyed my dad would be to meet me now.
Why? That's interesting.
Because I'm like him instead of like a good wife. Yeah. Yeah. But also I guess I'm like my mom. I'm mouthy and I'm like, headstrong and annoying.
Yeah. We like turn into our parents.
You said
to
your
some
dad was
degree.
like afraid of your, I guess, right?
Yeah.
But you said your dad was like afraid of your mom. He cheated on her once and she was like, your son's a whore.
Yeah. She fucking went to his mom and threw shit at his mom's house. She slashed the tires on his car and broke the windshield, set his shit on fire. Yeah. And then after that, I never heard anything about my dad having another woman. If he did, he like hid that shit really, really well. He was like, no. Yeah, because I remember that my cousins, like, they were used to, like, sometimes they would go hang out with their dad and their dad's girlfriend would be there and shit like that. And so sometimes we'd be there with, like, our uncle's girlfriend and it was just, like, a known thing. Never with my dad and my mom. It was like, she will murder him.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that.
So, but did you ever have to lie to people about this or?
So after I moved to the US, I did. Because here's what was weird is that like we moved to like a little townhouse. My mom was like trying to save the money that she did have for as long as possible because she had to figure out a job and all this shit. So for all intents and purposes, we were like poor people going to public school for the first time in our lives and like all this shit. Yeah, no. So it's true. It's the first time that I really like saw a lot of different classes of people and different races and all of this stuff. Yeah. And
sorry again.
No, I love it, you fucking fucks. But then what happened was as I would make friends and like get to know people and they would come to your house, then, kids, here's the funny thing is like people don't realize how quickly your parents come up when you're trying to get to know somebody. Like how quickly people are like, so what did your parents do? Or are your parents Republicans? Or like, what's the deal? Yeah. So then especially as a little kid, it would just be like kids would come to my house and then be like, oh, so you don't have a dad? Where's your dad? And then I have to be like,
a journalist. It was
well, no, I would be like, oh, he died. But then like kids would be like, well, how did he die? Yeah. Oh, he was a journalist. And that's it. And like people would just accept it. So
what did that feel like to have to lie to people?
It felt bad
like
because it's like you're in the moment of like, oh, I'm getting along with this person and really connecting. And then you suddenly have to stop and remember the lie and be like, ugh. Yeah. So I remember always, whether it was like a boyfriend or a new friend or a teacher or fucking school assignments. You remember if you ever had to write some shit about like what your parents did or what your last Christmas was with your both your family members.
You just write none of your goddamn business.
Exactly. Don't fucking ask me questions. Be like, who the fuck are you? Why are you asking?
The hardest 13-year-old in school.
Exactly. So I did through like middle school, probably through all of high school. I think in high school it was the first time that I had some friends that I like told the truth to. And it was actually because this is what happens is I, in high school in Miami, made friends with this girl. There's a lot of Colombian people in Miami, right? So I made best friends with this girl. And then months into our friendship, we like go to each other's houses and my mom drops me off. And when my mom like drives up to the house, her mom comes out and right away they're like, oh shit, hi. And like they knew each other from Colombia because my friend's mom had dated some dude that worked for my dad in Colombia. So she knew everything about my family. And it was like the first person I ever encountered outside of Colombia who was like, oh, I know, and like treated my mom with deference, and was very like, oh, I can't believe my daughter's friends with this girl whose dad I knew and like whatever.
Yeah.
So that she was the first one that was like, oh, so my mom knows your mom? That's weird. And then we had to talk about it. And then I was like, well, I guess I could tell you. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then it was still just always weird. Like our families spent Christmases together, but it was very like, her whole family would like bring drinks to my mom and be like, oh, hi, how are you? And yeah, whatever. Like very respectfully. Like it was very strange to have this like old world thing suddenly appear in the new world. Yeah, exactly.
With these new.
Yeah. But probably in college I started writing about my life and my family a lot. I caused like a whole fucking thing in my like freshman literature class because we had to write a thing about our heroes.
Yeah.
And I wrote about Pablo. And I wrote like a whole fucking paper about how Pablo Escobar was my hero for all of the things that he did.
Really?
Yeah. And the professor like made us talk about our fucking heroes in class. And there was another Colombian person.
And you were like, all those people that he killed just need to mind their own fucking business.
Like, it's so worse than that. It's so worse than that because like apparently another dude who was Colombian also wrote a paper that was about like a family member of his being a hero because he tried to stand up to some kind of like crime problem in Colombia and getting murdered.
Yeah.
So then it was like...
That was the Cali cartel, though.
Yeah, no, I don't know what it was. Like, I don't even remember the details, but he got like furious that I wrote a thing and then we had like this whole debate.
That's what I wanted to ask you. Has there ever been conversation?
Yeah, so that was like probably the first time where I had to like publicly defend Pablo and be like on the side of, no, I understand that you probably... As a, like, you could tell he came from a poor family and they probably, like, lived in a neighborhood that had to deal with a lot of the violence that wasn't even intended for them.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it was very like, ooh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But also, you don't know about all these other things that he did too. That was great.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. So I started wrestling with it. And then for the last few years, probably like the last 5 to 7 years, I've been trying to just be honest about it. Like, not bring it up because I don't want to talk to people about this. Yeah. But when it comes up naturally that people are like, oh, you're Colombian? Where are your parents? Whatever. I'll just be like, oh, yeah, my dad was killed when I was 11. And then that usually people are like, killed, interesting word choice. How did that, what? And I'm like, assassinated, narco trafficker, long story. And then they're just like, they'll either ask more questions or they will like walk away like, I don't want to touch that. So it's still a process of figuring it out, but I try not to lie about it anymore. The only time I would, I guess, would be, at work. I would definitely never at work talk about my real family.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
I don't smoke weed.
Yeah, I'm like,
I mean, there's worse ways to go. Ian Fidance, his dad had a train fall on him.
Oh shit!
It was like suspended and it fell on top of him.
Jesus Christ!
What the fuck? Where in New York?
In Pennsylvania, I think.
Like
Delaware.
Logistical and mechanical
I don't even
questions.
understand how that happens. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I guess it was like suspended and it just
like an elevated train. You mean, or like suspended? Like
it was
on
like a train car, like a train car. Yeah, that was
okay.
On a crane. Or something.
I was picturing like a train attached to a train, and then he's at the bottom. It doesn't make sense. All right, sorry.
I thought it was like the elevated subway, and it just like fell off on him.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah.
There's worse ways to go. I guess it's true.
Yeah. Well, I guess all that stuff made you the person that you are today.
I think so, and that's part of the reason I am trying to be honest about it is because how can you really get to know me if you don't understand that some of this came from that?
Right.
Anytime
you're at a party and you're bored,
no, fuck you, don't talk to me. Mike Recine is the only person allowed to ask me these goddamn questions.
Yeah. on his show. Well, yeah, thank you so much for being here. This was like
thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Yeah, we'll have you back to talk about
some more gory stuff.
Or whatever, just your life.
Yeah.
Have you ever committed any crimes? You ever shoplift? Or,
Yeah.
Me too. I just don't want to talk about it. On the show.
Yeah. I don't want to incriminate myself.
A real guy. A real wise guy never tells. All right. Well, thanks for being here. You want to plug anything?
No, you can follow me, I guess, on Instagram and Twitter. I am at Luisa Díez Nuts, Diez. Luisa Díez Nuts.
Sweet. Thanks for being here. And that's the show. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Después cuántos esfuerzos